I'm Veronica Dudo in Washington, D.C. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly, access denied. Jerusalem Patriarchate reports police restriction on Palm Sunday. Powerful message at Palm Sunday Mass. Pope Leo rejects using God to justify war. Historic visit. Pope Leo urges Monaco to use wealth as a beacon of solidarity. Plus, beyond the classroom, U.S. students find personal connection to faith in Rome on a trip of a lifetime. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us on this Monday of Holy Week. Our top story tonight, the war with the Islamic Republic of Iran is showing no signs of slowing down after another violent weekend. This video shows the skies over Tehran as air defense systems are activated following reports of heavy strikes on Iran's capital. Meanwhile, Spain, a NATO ally, has closed its airspace to U.S. warplanes involved in attacks on Iran. This comes in addition to the country's existing ban on the use of Spanish air bases for U.S. and Israeli operations in the Middle East. And in the Holy Land, the effects of the war have also been felt profoundly in Jerusalem during one of the holiest days of the year. Cardinal Pier Battista Pizzaballa, Latin Patriarch of the Holy Land, along with the Custos of the Holy Land, Father Francesco Yelpo, were barred by Israeli police from entering the Church of the Holy Sepulchre to celebrate Mass on Palm Sunday. Israeli President Isaac Herzog said he called Cardinal Pizzaballa and Custos Yelpo to express his sorrow over the incident, saying it was done out of a concern for safety. Today, the Patriarch and Custos released a statement saying, in part, the Latin Patriarchate of Jerusalem and the custody of the Holy Land hereby confirm that the matters concerning the Holy Week and Easter celebrations at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre have been addressed and resolved in coordination with the relevant authorities. In agreement with the Israel police, access for representatives of the Church has been secured in order to conduct the liturgies and ceremonies and to preserve the ancient Easter traditions at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Joining us now is EWTN News contributor Alberto Fernandez. Thank you so much for your time. So first, what were the restrictions that had been put on the Catholic delegation while they were trying to enter the Holy Sepulchre, and then were they actually in compliance?
Well, of course, this is a city that is under fire, under rocket fire from Iran, and so there are all these restrictions, and there's some exceptions made to some places, and you have the old city of Jerusalem, which is a difficult place to move about anyway. It seems like what happened was basically an overly officious mid to lower level policeman obstructing what should have been a normal thing, which should have been allowed the patriarch and the 3 or 4 people that were with him access to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre.
And because of this situation, how do you think it ended?
Well, it ended well. Obviously, it was a worldwide media circus, an embarrassing situation for the state of Israel, an opportunity for anti-Semites and a lot of dumb people to attack Israel. And thank God it was resolved. It's something that never should have happened, and the authorities have, apologized to the patriarch. So it ended well, but it's something which should have happened and something which was awful.
Israel swiftly, they did resolve this. Any lessons to be learned here?
Well, I think for the Israelis, the lesson is an important one, which is that even in a war of survival where your rockets are falling, you need to take care of the larger calendar. Some Israelis, for example, have mentioned to me the fact that the prime minister has had or should have a position of advisor on Christian affairs, and that that is a position that should have been filled. That's something that Israelis have mentioned to me. Other Israelis have mentioned to me about rejecting the whole idea of any restrictions at all in the old city. One of them told me, he said, you have thousands of people congregating at the IKEA furniture store in Jerusalem, and they're concerned about, worshipers in holy places. So there's a healthy debate in Israel about how do we prevent this from happening again and what rules should be put in place.
Alberto Fernandez, thanks so much for walking us through this.
Thank you.
At the Vatican, Pope Leo XIV also took time on Palm Sunday to address the conflict with Iran and to admonish those who wage war.
Fratelli, sorelle.
Brothers and sisters, this is our God, Jesus, King of peace, who rejects war, whom no one can use to justify war. He does not listen to the prayers of those who wage war, but rejects them, saying, "Even though you make many prayers, I will not listen. Your hands are full of blood."
Le vostre mani grondano sangue.
During the White House press briefing today, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt addressed the comments made by Pope Leo.
I don't think there's anything wrong with our military leaders or with the president calling on the American people to pray for our service members and those who are serving our country overseas. In fact, I think it's a very noble thing to do. And if you talk to many service members, they will tell you they appreciate the prayers and support from the Commander-in-Chief and from his cabinet.
As Operation Epic Fury continues full force, President Donald Trump says the U.S. is in serious discussions with the new Iranian regime and that great progress has been made to bring the battle to an end. But at the same time, President Trump threatens the Islamic Republic with more attacks, including those on civilian infrastructure, if an agreement is not reached. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen.
Veronica, good evening to you. President Trump's stern warning today comes amidst uncertainty over when the war with Iran might end. Now, the president told reporters he has several alternatives and that the U.S. is weeks ahead of schedule with Iran.
Hopeful for a deal with Iran, but also ready to fight on, President Donald Trump spells out, if for any reason a deal is not shortly reached, which it probably will be, and if the Hormuz Strait is not immediately open for business, we will conclude our lovely stay in Iran by blowing up and completely obliterating all of their electric generating plants, oil wells, and Karg Island, and possibly all desalinization plants, which we have purposely not yet touched.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Today, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt addressed reporters.
So again, this is another historic opportunity for Iran to do the right thing, to rid themselves of their nuclear ambitions, and to come to a deal with this president and the administration. Or again, they will see the grave consequences of the United States Armed Forces, which they are continuing to see every day throughout this operation.
Meanwhile, in Israel, smoke rising from an oil refinery complex after it sustained a direct attack. And in Iran, Israeli airstrikes hit several universities, including ones that Israel claimed were used for nuclear research and development. On Air Force One last night, President Trump told reporters,
I would only say that we're doing extremely well in that negotiation, but you never know with Iran because we negotiate with them and then we always have to blow them up.
President Trump also said Iran allowed 20 oil ships through the Strait of Hormuz starting today. The conflict has shaken oil and gas markets and disrupted travel. Iran has warned it could mine the Persian Gulf if it is invaded. Tehran also acknowledged it received a 15-point proposal from the Trump administration to reach a deal, but said there had been no direct negotiations with Washington.
As I have mentioned before, the material conveyed to us under any title, such as the 15-point plan, has mainly included very ambitious, unrealistic, and illogical requests.
We're having very good meetings, both directly and indirectly, and I think we're getting a lot of very important points.
Now, Iran's Karg Island, which President Trump mentioned in his post, is vital to that nation's oil exports and a very big source of revenue. Now, President Trump suggested in an interview that American troops could seize that island. Veronica?
And Owen, Caroline Leavitt was asked about who's in charge in Iran.
Yeah, that's right, Veronica. And she said, the Iranian leadership is very fragmented, that its intercommunications have been neutered, that they've had little communication, if any, with the new Ayatollah, and that part of diplomacy is figuring out who's in charge. Veronica, send it back to you.
Thank you, Owen. Joining me now is retired U.S. Army Green Beret and demolition expert Ryan Hendrickson, who survived a near-fatal injury while serving in Afghanistan in 2010. Thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for your service. Now, Ryan, can you talk to us through what Special Ground Forces might do if they would try to take Karg Island, Iran's primary oil terminal, handling nearly 90% of its crude oil?
Karg Island is extremely strategic for the Iranians because it's their deep sea port. It's shallow water on the coastline of Iran, so they can't get oil tankers in there to put them up with the oil exports and then onward, which includes the Straits of Hormuz. With that being said, when you're looking at Karg Island, about 20 square miles, so I think it's 3 by 5. If you look in history a little bit, which you always got to go back to history, there's another island that's 20.6 square miles, and that is Iwo Jima. And there was 7,000 U.S. service members killed on Iwo Jima, and they're roughly about the same size. And so people may say, well, that was in the 40s. Technology has come so far, but technology works both ways. And one thing that needs to be remembered is the enemy has a boat as well. And so now artillery capabilities are well over 20 miles. Ballistic capabilities, Iran has the capabilities to launch ballistics over 2,000 miles, some reports of 4,000 miles. There's just a lot. Shahed drones, definitely in Shahed drone range. And so when you're secluded on an island and you're holding that ground, that opens you up for massive attacks, not to mention all ground forces or boots on the ground, they have to be resupplied. Unless you have 100% control of the skies and the seas, then you can't, then you're always going to be running a risk trying to resupply these ground forces.
Now, we do hear from the administration, including President Trump, a lot of times they don't want to give out any type of military moves that they are looking at. But we did hear the president say that if the Strait of Hormuz is not open, then they will completely obliterate Karg Island. Could that calculation potentially be that there are a lot of landmines on the island, or could you just share your thoughts on that situation?
So all I can do is go off of what I would do and personal experience, and a lot of missions that you plan, especially in special forces, you look for the enemy's most likely and the most dangerous avenues of approach, or what they can do to you. And in my opinion, what I would do if I was in the Iranian seat is I would completely mine everything, because that limits freedom of movement. And if I can limit your freedom of movement, then I can strike you.
Now, you nearly lost your life in 2010. You were blown up by an IED. Can you just talk a little bit about the risk that troops face through all of this for our viewers?
Yeah, absolutely. 2010, I stepped on an IED, nearly took my life, and that's a very real risk that U.S. forces are going to face. The problem is we haven't faced it on a scale that we could see with Iran. They are a manufacturer of a lot of military landmines. And so if you don't think that they're going to use landmines, because landmines have been shown to be an equalizer throughout the world. If you look at what the Taliban, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, what they've been able to do to major militaries, I've been able to stall you because of the threat of what's buried underneath the ground. If you look at Ukraine and Russia, it's basically a stalemate, and a lot of that, in my humble opinion, is because of landmines.
Ryan Hendrickson, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much.
I really appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
As the U.S. conflict with Iran continues, more ground troops are headed to the Middle East region. Iran's brutal regime promises to set our troops on fire. Meanwhile, some U.S. lawmakers say they've been left scratching their heads, wondering what the administration's next move could be. Several from both parties are now demanding President Trump address Congress. Let's check in with Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales with the latest. Eric.
Well, good evening, Veronica. Although thousands of troops have assembled in the region, it is important to note that President Trump hasn't ordered the U.S. military to enter Iran just yet. But U.S. lawmakers tell me that they want answers. They have to know what the objectives are and what the president is trying to carry out.
This president is pushing us further and further into a conflict with no foreseeable off-ramp and thousands of more troops moving into that region, and he still has not come to Congress for any kind of authorization for what is clearly not just a war, but the biggest military engagement we've had since the war in Afghanistan.
Senator John Kennedy tells me he doesn't want to see boots on the ground. Quite the opposite. Maybe it's time to get out after U.S. forces destroyed most of Iran's missile and drone manufacturing facilities, along with its Air Force and Navy.
We've destroyed the infrastructure of the Revolutionary Guard. That was why we went in. And as far as I'm concerned, it's time to get out.
While chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee disagrees, Senator Tom Cotton says its revolutionary regime must be neutered and no longer able to hold the civilized world at risk.
I expect this campaign to last weeks, not months, and I think that's still a good estimate, but we have to see it to the end.
The way that we get Iran to do what needs to be done is we keep the pressure on, and that's exactly what the administration is doing.
Senator Hoeven adds Gulf states need to continue to help the U.S., and European nations need to do more.
You saw where Iran fired a missile 2,500 miles all the way to Diego Garcia. That means any of the capitals in Europe, continental Europe, are at risk.
It is important to note that if President Donald Trump approves plans to move in ground forces, such an effort would mark a new phase of the war that could be significantly more dangerous to U.S. troops than the first 4 weeks. Veronica?
Eric, switching gears a bit, as the DHS partial government shutdown continues, we were expecting some action during the pro forma session of the Senate today. Did that happen, and where do things stand?
No, it didn't happen. You know, we were expecting Senate Republicans to introduce the recently House-passed 6-month continuing resolution to fund DHS during today's pro forma session. Now, Democrats were on hand to quickly object the measure, but Senator John Hoeven, he gavelled in, and then just a few seconds later, he quickly gavelled out and put the Senate in recess till Thursday. But before he did leave, he did tell members of the media that Republicans are working on a budget reconciliation bill to fund DHS for the next 3 years. Now, several Republicans want Majority Leader John Thune to bring the Senate back from their Easter break. Senator Rick Scott went further and said Republicans must blow up the filibuster in the Senate and pass DHS funding along with other GOP policies.
There's a way to get the president's agenda done. There's a way to help get every promise he made accomplished. Everything he ran on 2024. And you know how to do that? We need to blow up the filibuster.
Senator Scott was speaking at the Conservative Political Action Conference in Dallas, Texas. Now, blowing up the filibuster means it refers to eliminating the 60-vote threshold required to end debate on legislation in the U.S. Senate, effectively allowing bills to pass with a simple majority. We're going to have to wait and see what Republicans plan next. We'll watch their next move. Veronica?
Thanks, Eric. Long-awaited relief is arriving in Cuba. Russian state news says a tanker carrying nearly 730,000 barrels of oil from Russia has arrived in the island nation. It comes a day after President Donald Trump said he had no problem with the delivery. He cited the humanitarian crisis happening there as the reason for the delivery. That crisis began after Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro was arrested in January and Venezuela stopped supplying Cuba with oil. It's not clear if President Trump is completely ending that blockade or if he only plans to allow in small amounts of oil. We have a lot more still to come on EWTN News Nightly. Paychecks arrived. Checkpoint bottlenecks recede as TSA personnel return to their posts. And historic first, Pope Leo XIV becomes the first pontiff to visit Monaco in 500 years. The Transportation Safety Administration says it is sending the first paychecks to its workers as early as today after weeks of chaos in U.S. airports. Some relief was seen this morning as security wait times improved in places like Atlanta and Houston. At New York's LaGuardia, some travelers still face long lines with wait times stretching beyond 2 hours. Meanwhile, Baltimore-Washington International reports shorter waits but is still urging passengers to arrive 3 hours early. The move comes after President Trump ordered immediate pay for TSA officers on Friday to help ease the nationwide backlog. Air Canada CEO Michael Rosso announces his retirement following intense backlash over a language controversy. The announcement comes after he was criticized for failing to speak French in a condolence video following last week's fatal collision at LaGuardia Airport that killed 2 of the airline's pilots. One of the pilots who died, Antoine Forrest, was from French-speaking Quebec. Prime Minister Mark Carney joined hundreds of citizens in criticizing the English-only response from the Montreal-based carrier. Speaking in one of the world's wealthiest countries, Pope Leo urged residents to use their prosperity to help those in need. The Vatican says the trip highlights the global influence even small nations like Monaco can have, especially in promoting dialogue, solidarity, and peace. EWTN News Vatican correspondent Valentina Di Donato has more.
This weekend marked historic moments for Pope Leo XIV, including the first visit by a pope in the modern era to Monaco, the world's second smallest nation. Arriving by helicopter, the Holy Father began his second apostolic journey with a warm welcome in the Principality. The Pope first met with Prince Albert II of Monaco and Princess Charlene at the Prince's Palace before heading to the Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception to greet the local Catholic community. Inside the cathedral, the Pope was welcomed by the hymn Tu es Petrus, You are Peter, traditionally reserved for the papal celebrations. Later in the day, Pope Leo celebrated Holy Mass at the Louis II Stadium, leaving the faithful with a powerful message.
The Church in Monaco is called to bear witness to living in peace and with God's blessing. Therefore, dear friends, bring happiness to others through your faith by manifesting authentic joy, which is not won through a wager, but shared through charity. God's love is the source of this joy.
The Holy Father urged the faithful not to become desensitized to violence, warning that every life lost hurts the body of Christ.
It is a gift of grace that makes people children of God and brothers and sisters to one another. This gift sheds light on our present. For the wars that stain it with blood are the fruit of the idolatry of power and money. Every life cut short wounds the body of Christ. Let us not grow accustomed to the clamor of weapons and images of war.
In Rome, Valentina Di Donato for EWTN News Nightly.
Up next on EWTN News Nightly, Faith Formation. U.S. students find personal connection to faith in Rome. We speak with their chaplain. Over 200 students from the Chesterton Schools Network, which includes over 70 classical Catholic high schools across the U.S. and abroad, are back in the States after wrapping up their 10-day tour of Italy. Upper-class students from 12 academies throughout the U.S. had the opportunity to travel to Assisi and Rome, seeing relics and ancient churches. Over 200 students from the Chesterton Schools Network, which includes over 70 classical Catholic high schools across the U.S. and abroad, are wrapping up their 10-day tour of Italy. Father Joseph Johnson led the trip and joins me now to discuss some of the highlights. Father Joseph, thank you for coming on. Can you share some of the most special moments from the trip?
Well, I think one of the best things was early on we were able to be at the Wednesday audience with our Holy Father. And I think it was so special to the kids to be able to see that an American Pope is there. It just gave a sense of the universality of the church, both with a Pope from our own homeland, but also the universality of the people, pilgrims from all over the world that were there as well. So it's not that we're just claiming the Pope as ours, we're part of one big spiritual family. As the Holy Father went through the square in the Pope Mobile, He saw this big wave of people wearing blue Chesterton sweatshirts, and he saw Chesterton, and he stopped and he said, "Chesterton?" And the kids just were so happy, and they actually were able to give to his security guard an extra Chesterton sweatshirt. So who knows, maybe the Holy Father is wearing that in the papal apartments tonight.
Wow. Well, you know, he does like to work out too. So what an incredible moment for the students, and also historical. So can you just talk a little bit again about the importance for your students to be able to have this opportunity?
Well, going to a Catholic classical academy, part of it is a capstone to their intellectual development. They've always been studying about ancient Rome. They've studied all of the history of the church. And so to actually see the Forum, the Colosseum, to see all these places where so much history happened, but then also to see the lives of the saints. You know, right now we're in Assisi and praying at the tomb of St. Francis, and to be able to experience all of that, not just as things on a page in a book, but rather that this is a lived experience, this is a reality, and that God picks people like them to raise up to be saints today as well.
A absolute great memento there. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Chesterton Academy Network and how many U.S. schools took part?
So there are about a dozen schools that took part. We have 5 busloads of students here. So it's the seniors is a capstone experience. There are over 70 schools now. It started just with 1 school in the Twin Cities, but it's a model that has had a great popularity. It's a parent-led model in conjunction with the local diocese, but it's a classical curriculum. It's Catholic Mass every single day, but it's also affordable. We don't want Catholic education to just be for those who are wealthy, but really do so much to try and keep the cost down so that any parent that wants to send their child to a Catholic high school can do so.
Father Joseph Johnson, thank you so much.
Thank you. God bless you.
You too. We thank you for watching tonight. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, X, YouTube, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Veronica Dudo. Good night and God bless.